All right, rejoined by Jess Pryles. Appreciate you hanging with me through the break there, Jess.
Absolutely.
A couple of different things that we can get to at here. So there has been a lot of talk over the last 18, 20 months. It took off like a house of fire, probably closed at 17, rolling into 18, might have tapered a little bit through the year last year. And that's sous vide cooking. I know you're not necessarily a huge user of that, but do you appreciate the appliance, or do you just not really fanboy out to that whole idea of cooking stuff that way?
I think it's really cool that such an advanced technique is available for people to use in their kitchens and like in a home environment. Personally, I didn't want to give up counter space to a sous vide machine. That was part of it. But more so, I've had sous vide in restaurant settings. I think you can go overboard with it. I've had, especially chicken, which has just been denatured to the point where it nearly feels like a wet sponge that's lost its ability to spring back. It kind of unappealing. In the same way that I will choose an upper choice steak sometimes over a prime or over a Wagyu, I like the toothsomeness of meat for me personally. So, and I never ordered tenderloin. That's a great example. That to me is just it's nearly too tender.
Yep.
So, for my palate, I'm not tremendously, I wouldn't use it enough. There's probably applications, especially some of the tougher cuts of the deer, like some roast, that it would be phenomenal on. And then in some extent, I kind of should have one just because I should be experimenting with all of the tools. But I also think that it's nearly like, there are certain kind of cult cookers that come out, or there was a thing called the Thermomix in Australia, which is kind of like the Vitamix, and everyone was like, oh, buy the Thermomix cookbook. And it's one of those things, like, if you sous vide, you will find sous vide websites and get on board the sous vide train. But I will say this, the Hardcore Carnivore Black, which is my charcoal-based steak seasoning, is like crushing it in the sous vide community, because one of the issues with sous vide, you don't get any browning or color or crust.
Right.
So a lot of folks are using it to create that look and keep their steak, perfectly sous vide tender.
So let's transition out of sous vide into barbecue pits. I was going to ask you what you thought the most popular barbecue pit is, but that seems like a pretty narrow question. You're going to have your opinion. Everybody else is going to have their own opinion on what the most popular is, and it's going to be a little more personally biased, I suppose. So let me take it down a different direction. Let's talk specifically about pellet cookers. Obviously, Traeger has been the name that has been synonymous with pellet cookers ever since the beginning. But once they lost the patent and then everybody else started coming to the market, you now have a number of other, pretty decent name brand players out there, and pellet cookers in general becoming more well-known, more than they ever have in the past. So what's your take on pellet cookers, and do you see this market as one that will continue on the growing trend over the next 2, 3, 4 years?
Yeah, I think it's going to be huge. I think it's going to continue to be huge. I don't personally cook on a pellet cooker. The company that makes my offset pits and spits are the first one making them in Texas, and I know Ryan, the owner, tells me all the time how it's just blowing up.
Mm-hmm.
Not literally, because I had that happen to a friend, other brand model, which is the issue when you're working with electronics and things get stuck and they can be expensive to run, et cetera, et cetera. But what they offer in convenience for the here and now, like no argument can be made against that. So for me personally, the best barbecue I think comes off an offset cooker. It's the only cooker that runs entirely off like large format wood smoke rather than a smolder. But with our short attention spans these days, I can see why they're incredibly popular. And not everyone wants to be like, I'm going to open up a new barbecue joint. Look at me cooking with wood. Like, that's me. That's my pride. I definitely think if you want to consider yourself a pit master, or you want to consider yourself a live fire expert cook, you need to understand how fire works. And you don't understand how fire works when all you're doing is flicking a switch. So I think, you look at people like Matt Pittman. Matt knows how to cook on an offset cooker. He's paid his dues. He knows how fire runs. So he's running with Traeger right now. And you put him in front of anything, he can cook on anything. So I think it's kind of the same thing. But if all you're looking for is like, really decent barbecue with really little effort in your yard, rock and roll on the pellet cookers. I think that there's a little bit to go. I think that whole industry has been afforded a little bit of leeway in terms of them being called grills. I don't, until there's a live fire and a live sear, I understand that I can put a skillet in them and they can get really hot and I can sear that way. But then that's no different to cooking something, on the stovetop in the kitchen. It's a little bit of a stretch. So I think that for the convenience they offer you for smoked meats and all kinds of smoked products and just getting out there and giving it a shot, they are going to continue to grow in popularity. But I don't think that despite the kind of attachments and things that they're trying to create, that they can completely replace a grill. And if you're really a grilling or cooking enthusiast, you should probably have a couple of different items anyway. I've got a gas flat top that I cook burgers on. Like, it's just a complete cast iron flat top grill. I've got a chef's fire pit that Pitts and Spitz built for me that's like I have to light a whole wood fire to get it going. I've got a PK grill that I do most of my charcoal grilling in. And of course I have my offset smoker and I've got a couple other grills that have been given to me over the years. So if you're really an enthusiast, you will own multiple units. If you're someone who is into, some light cooking at home or just wants to produce nice barbecue or wants to keep it simple or you have space limitations, that's when you can look at one unit. That's why something like Big Green Egg was insanely popular. And I think that's why pellet cookers are getting really popular and staying there too.
Well, I think that a lot of the pellet cooker companies have used the term specifically grill because that resonates more with the majority of folks that cook in the backyard. People in the backyard already have a gas grill or a charcoal grill. So when you call this a wood pellet grill, that's something that they can wrap their head around, which leads to the success and the growth of the market. Where if you called it a wood pellet barbecue pit or barbecue cooker, that might not be as appealing or it might not be as well known as some of the other, as the term grill would be. So they latch on to that. But I certainly agree. And I've told everybody that I've recommended a wood cooker to or a pellet cooker to, if you're going to grill on it most of the time, then this isn't what you want. You want to go out and get a grill. You can get 450 degrees, but it's like you're putting something in the oven. You're not getting that direct flame or something that like you would get with the grill. So I certainly agree with what you're saying there. And I agree. I think there's going to be quite a bit of more popularity going into that segment as well. And I do have a wood burner, and I love it. When I have the time, that's all I want to do is throw sticks because I truly believe that nothing tastes better coming out of barbecue-wise out of a wood-burning pit. It's absolutely spectacular. Mm-hmm. All right, so you are a personality. You are a business owner, obviously, with Hardcore Carnivore. Part of the business, obviously, you do classes and stuff. I think you have a sold-out class coming up in a week and a half in Texas. And then the other side of business, of course, is that rub thing that you have going on. So you have 3 successful rubs that are out now, the black, the red, the Amplify. 4. Oh, camo, too. Right. Sorry about that. Is there anything new on the rub front, or have we kind of run the limit of where Jess wants to be with rubs right now?
There is. There's actually a new rub coming out in about 2 weeks' time, and no one knows that until right now. I can't tell you any more about it, but there is another one coming, and it's quite different, and it's my first collab rub. That's all I'll say. It's very exciting. I have always said since the beginning that if you look at all the rubs that I have out now, they're all very different to each other. They all serve a purpose, but it's not all just like, oh, look, another paprika-based rub that's all-purpose with a lot of sugar in it because everyone likes sweet, you know? So I think I may be nearing the end of you don't want to start cannibalizing your own business and putting too much stuff out. It may be time to diversify into other products. But at the same time, every time I talk about new products, someone's like, do a spicy version, do a Cajun version, do this, do that. And I'm always shocked because it's like, well, you know, there's so many great Cajun rubs out there. Like, why do you need another one from me? But people like exploring that stuff. So go figure.
So would there ever be a time for as dominated as the rub market is, and certainly you have a niche and you're able to exploit it and be successful at it, do you see a time where you would see a hardcore carnivore sauce coming from you?
Potentially. To be honest with you, like I mean, I've got sauce recipes that I would love to start playing around with. It's more of a logistical decision at this point. It's very different getting into what they call wet manufacturing instead of dry manufacturing. So that's really where it's at. But, you know, I guess part of the thing is this. Before I started doing classes or before I started, you know, doing some events, did Hot Luck, what Aaron Franklin's did in Austin last year and a few others, people didn't ever have the opportunity to try my food in person. So the closest they could come was to buy my seasoning because that was what my palate liked in the bottle. And I think that it says something. It's not just like, oh man, you know, I love your branding, I love your name. Like the reason that this rub is so popular is the way it tastes. And then the next one for the same reason, and so on and so forth. And Camo, which is the forgotten one, which is intended for game and lamb. I've got folks using that on beef, using that on chicken, Grilling with Dad on Instagram. He's one of my influencers, one of the Hardcore Carnivore core crew team. He's using it a lot on pork. So I think what it is that people are like, yo, I like where your palate is at, and I like the things that you're tasting and putting out. So I want to see what your version of, you know, Cajun rub, sauce, et cetera, is. So I do understand it from that perspective, but I will only put things out if I completely believe in them. It's not just about rolling them out for the sake of like, oh, you know what? I feel like we're coming into grill season. You know, let's look at the numbers and see what we can do. Because even if we sell this many, you know, or let's do an Easter version, or it's all, everything that I've put out has been put out because I believe that it's the best thing to put on your meat, not because I see an opportunity in the market. So
let me follow up on that. You had Hardcore Carnivore, the book is out. This is the time of year where you're going to see, you know, whatever the new run of grilling and barbecue books coming out are going to be over the next 2, 3, 4 weeks, maybe even a little bit longer than that. Are you considering another book, or are you good right now?
I'm pretty good right now. There's a lot of stuff happening. I actually, we just kind of announced it recently, but I'm the spokesperson for Lone Star Beer now, and so that's a multi-year deal. We got a lot of fun projects in the works and doing a lot of stuff with them. So that's taking up a bunch of time. I know we're going to talk about knives too. I'm doing some stuff with Gerber. I love, and let me make clear, this is the knife company, not the baby food.
Right.
I love being able to work with them. Their products are just sick, and we're actually at the very, very infancy stage of potentially designing some meat knives too. I would definitely consider working on another book, but I would also, you know, same thing as the rubs. I would want to make sure that I'm coming to market and ready to come out with an idea that is useful, not just because I think I could sell book 2, you know. And there's a reason that, you know, I'm in multiple continents with this rub, and, you know, X amount of stores over the United States, and still have fans who buy the book over and over again. it's because it's not a one and done. It's not a, hey, I have got a name for myself, so here's a blip on the radar. It's, hey, I think this is a really good book. I'm going to tell my friend about it, and he might buy it too. Or, hey, I'm going to take this bottle of rub over to my friends because I really like it, and then they'll take it from there. So I think that putting out quality products, it may be kind of what they call the long play, but it'll always rise to the top.
No doubt. All right, so we got a couple minutes left, and let's go ahead and rotate back to what you were just talking about when it comes to knives. Somebody wanted me to ask you what the best knife to, I guess for lack of a better term, slice or dress or gut out a deer or a boar or whatever it is you've hunted or harvested out in the wild.
So that's a great question. And what a lot of people don't realize is a lot of folks have what we call an everyday carry, which is basically a pocket knife. So what they carry around with them all the time. And oftentimes that'll be a knife that folds in on itself. I always recommend a fixed blade knife for hunting. I use a Gator Premium, the Gerber Gator Premium hunting knife. The reason that I like a fixed blade for that is because when you have something that folds in on itself, it means you have a lot of nooks and crannies. Mm. And when you are gutting a deer, a hog, whatever it may be, there's a lot of crud flying around. And it's the best way to make sure that you're cleaning your knife to the best of your ability is by making sure there's just no corners and bits and pieces where stuff can get in. The knife that I use, that Gator Premium, has a non-slip grip to it as well. It's got a really great shape to the blade as well, so I can actually use it for skinning. Usually you need to swap over to kind of a more delicate blade to do that, but this one does it all for me. So from everything from, I got taught to hunt by the Bendelay family here in Texas, and they taught me that, after a safe amount of time of dispatching the animal, you should go over and try and bleed it out. So it's big enough to cut the jugular and have it bleed out. It's big enough to then use for skinning. It really is an all-purpose. Once I finished using a blade like that, like a nice fixed blade hunting knife, and I've quartered the animal, that's when I swapped to it's called a Gerber Vital blade. So it's basically like a scalpel with a replaceable blade. I use that, and I use a boning knife, and I get into fine detail. That's when it becomes more like butchery. So I want the little scalpel knife or the Vital, and I actually have that on my website too, on Hardcore Carnivore. That's how strongly I believe in it. I started selling it. But first of all, when you're out in the field, or I'm not great at sharpening knives, having something that you can just like discard the blunt blade and switch out super quickly to a nice razor sharp one is super duper helpful. But the smallness of it, especially if you want to start breaking down those muscles, and especially anyone who's tried to process their own deer will know what a giant pain in the butt the silver skin is, and how that white kind of film can form over the meat the longer it's exposed to the air. So you want to get in there with a really fine blade because you don't want to sacrifice the meat. You just want to get rid of the silver skin. So all in all, for me, I 3 kind of ride or die knives in my hunting kit. The one fixed blade to do the heavy lifting, a boning knife. I always try and have a boning knife to also take out the back strap. If you think about it, like, butchers use boning knives for exactly the same thing. We really should be using a flexible blade knife to do that, because we need to curve around the ribs to get that muscle out. And then that scalpel blade, the Vital, the Gerber Vital as well. Those are the 3 I would recommend. And if you've got those, you're pretty set with anything that comes your way.
Is that like Gerber.com or GerberKnives.com, or what's the website there?
It's Gerber Gear. Yeah,
Okay.
Gerber Gear. It's on Amazon. It's in all big, hunting and fishing retailers. The Vital is on hardcorecarnivore.com, and their stuff is super affordable, which is really, really nice, and it's just good quality stuff. Like, I don't. You know me, Greg. You've known me a long time. I don't talk about stuff unless I actually use it and believe in it. You know that I knock back a bunch of stuff that other people would be happy to take and say, "Yeah, I'll take that $200 to talk about this POS." That's not me.
Jess Pryles is Hardcore Carnivore, hardcorecarnivore.com, jesspryles.com, our websites at Jess Pryles on the handles for social media. And we have covered it all tonight. Jess Pryles, certainly appreciate you coming on and pulling 2 segments as always. And we'll talk to you soon.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
You got it. There she is. Jess Pryles carrying the first hour and doing it easily. And I think we covered it all. We talked about high-end steakhouses. We talked about gutting deers and boars and knives and sauces and rubs. And a whole bunch of stuff. Fabulous. All right.